Hello there, and welcome back to the Midnight Orbit. Tonight, you're going to hear 3 terrifying stories of alien encounters in deep space. These aren't campfire tales or urban legends. These are first-hand accounts from people who've worked on the very edges of our solar system. So settle in, let your body grow heavy, your breathing slow, and your mind drifts into the silence of the void. Because in the cold expanse of space, the unknown is always watching, and sometimes it finds you first. For nearly a decade, I've been a maintenance engineer for Argus Deep Space Mining, hopping between orbital stations and remote rigs. We work months at a time without seeing anyone except our own crew. Out there, the hum of recycled air and the slow rotation of stars becomes your whole reality. This happened on a survey run just past Neptune, at the edge of the system where sunlight feels like a dim bulb, and you can go days without hearing a transmission from anyone but your own ship. It was 2:40 station time when the beacon started pinging. An old analog signal, no encryption, no ID tag. Most ships these days broadcast digital distress calls, but this one sounded like something from the early 2010s. The coordinates put it about 200,000 kilometers off our flight path. Protocol said to log it and move on unless you're inside 50,000, but it was dead quiet out there, and curiosity got the better of us. We burned a little extra fuel to intercept. The vessel we found was small, maybe the size of a commuter shuttle. Matte black hull. No registry markings, no running lights. It just drifted, tumbling slightly. The more we stabilized it with our thrusters, the more it looked wrong. No antenna arrays, no docking ports, just blank plating, as if it had been built to hide from scanners. Our ship's sensors showed no power signatures, no life signs, yet the beacon kept pulsing, steady as a heartbeat. We discussed whether to board. We weren't a rescue crew, but salvage rights can be lucrative, and there was something about that steady analog ping that made me want to see inside. I volunteered to go over with 2 security techs. As soon as our docking clamp sealed, I felt uneasy. The station's bulkheads always have a certain vibration through your boots. Recycled air, the hum of reactors. But this one was silent. When the airlock door hissed open, a faint dust drifted into our helmets, clinging to the visors like soot. My filters indicated that the air was sterile, but it still tasted metallic through the suit. Inside was darkness. No emergency lights, no glow strips. Just the narrow cones of our helmet beams sweeping over corridors that looked melted. Panels sagged and curled as if they'd been burned and then frozen. No bodies. No personal effects, not even loose tools, only the dust covering everything like ash from some invisible fire. We split up, bad idea in hindsight. My comms started crackling almost immediately. There? I heard in my earpiece, then nothing. I tried to raise the others. Dead air. The corridor ahead of me curved slightly, the deck plating creaking under my boots. Though the ship shouldn't have had gravity. I rounded a corner and froze. Ahead of me, the passageway opened into what must have been the bridge. The door was half open, its edges jagged. Beyond it, my beam caught on something glinting. I squeezed through and found the console. There, still pulsing, was the source of the beacon. An old-style transponder jury rigged into the ship's systems. It was running on its own capacitor, even though the rest of the vessel was dead. Around it, the dust was thicker, piled on the floor in drifts like black snow. I crouched to examine the wiring. That's when the pile nearest my boots shifted, not from my movement or any air current, but like something under the dust had exhaled. A chill ran down my spine. I straightened, scanning with my beam. The room was silent except for my breathing. Then, through the static of my comm, a faint whisper. Not English, not any language I knew, just a string of sounds that seemed to echo inside my skull. I backed toward the door. My heart was hammering so loud I could hear it over the suit fans. The corridor behind me was darker than before. Something was standing there, tall, thin, its limbs too long for a human silhouette. No faceplate, no visible features, just a shape darker than the dark around it. My helmet cam flickered static as the thing tilted its head like it was listening. I bolted. I don't even remember turning. Instinct took over. My boots hammered against the deck as I ran, the beam from my helmet shaking across the warped metal walls. Every step kicked up that black dust. It hung in the air behind me, slow, weightless, like smoke in 0G. The comms were alive again, bursts of static, fragments of my crewmates' voices, overlapping in ways that didn't make sense. Greater than Ethan, do you copy? Where are you left? Not alone. Then the line cut. Only my ragged breathing and the faint metallic echo of my own steps. I rounded a corner and nearly crashed into one of the techs, Mira. Her faceplate was fogged, eyes wide. She kept shaking her head, mouthing something. I toggled her channel. Mira, what happened? Her voice came through cracked and thin. He's gone. I was right behind him, and he just vanished. I turned around, and there was only dust. Before I could answer, the deck trembled. Just once, a low vibration that I felt more than heard. Somewhere deeper in the ship, metal groaned like a hull flexing under pressure. We didn't wait to investigate. We started back toward the airlock. The corridors seemed longer than before, and the turns were wrong. My internal map insisted the docking port was 50 meters ahead, but the passage kept extending, repeating bulkhead patterns like we were walking in circles. And the dust, it was thicker. It clung to our boots and the lower halves of our suits, coating them like tar. Each step made a faint, sticky sound instead of a metallic clank. I tried to brush it off my leg. It pulsed once under my glove, almost alive. Mira saw it too. Greater than Ethan, we need to go, now. That's when the lights flickered. Not ship lights, our helmet lamps. They dimmed together, then flared white. For a split second, I saw the entire corridor alive with movement, dozens of tall, thin figures frozen in place, like mannequins caught mid-stride. Then the lights died completely. I could hear Mira screaming through the comm, distant, echoing. I shouted her name, stumbled forward, and found nothing but space. The floor vanished beneath me, 0G again, and I was floating, spinning slowly. Tiny motes of dust drifted around me, glowing faintly like embers. In that silence, a voice, clear this time, inside my head rather than through the radio. Greater than stay. Not a sound, more a thought pressed into my mind. It came with a vision, a black expanse stretching forever, and shapes moving between the stars, thin and long, their motions too smooth, too deliberate to be random. I clenched my eyes shut and forced myself to think of the ship, of gravity, of escape. I hit the thruster control on my suit. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. The dust wrapped around my arms, crawling up toward my visor like a living film. Then a blinding flash. I was on the deck again, face down. Gravity restored. The corridor was empty. My helmet readout screamed, 3 hours of suit time lost. Yet my timer said I'd been gone less than 20 minutes. The airlock loomed ahead. I stumbled toward it, half running, half falling. When I slapped the panel, it didn't respond at first. Then suddenly it was open, and I was inside our shuttle. Mira was there, strapped in beside the other tech, who looked half-conscious. They both stared at me like they'd seen a ghost. "Where were you?" she asked. "I was on the ship," I said. "You saw me." She shook her head. "You were gone for 3 hours. We searched. You weren't anywhere. Then you just appeared in the lock." Her voice cracked on that last word. We undocked immediately. The clamp disengaged with a metallic snap, and the derelict drifted away into the black. Through the aft cam, I saw something I wish I could forget. The black dust streaming out of the airlock, curling into shapes like arms reaching after us. For a few seconds, the outline of a figure stood framed in the opening. Tall, skeletal, head cocked at that same unnatural angle. Then the feed cut to static. We didn't speak for the rest of the return flight. Command told us to file a minimal incident report and classified the beacon as false. 2 weeks later, the shuttle was sent back to that sector with a cleanup crew. They never found the vessel again. The coordinates showed nothing, space. But sometimes, during maintenance shifts when the ship is quiet, I still hear that analog ping echoing through the comms. My name's Cara Mendoza. I was part of the long-range exploration crew aboard the Aquila 4, one of the first privately funded missions beyond the Kuiper Belt. We were a mixed team, scientists, engineers, and a few security staff, but most of the journey was meant to be spent in cryosleep. 9 months out from Earth orbit, I went under. The next thing I remember was waking up alone. At first, everything seemed normal. The pod systems were humming. I could feel the gel drain away and the restraints release. My body ached like it always did after stasis, but the lights were dim and the air was freezing. I blinked against the frost on the inside of the glass. Every other pod in the bay was still sealed. All 16 of them. The intercom should have come alive automatically, but it was silent. I tried calling out anyway. "Bridge, this is Mendoza." Why was I reactivated? Nothing. Only a low hum through the ventilation shafts. I climbed out, bare feet touching the cold metal deck. My breath came out in white plumes. The environmental display beside the door showed the temperature at -5 degrees Celsius, way below operational standards. I pulled on the nearest thermal suit I could find and started for the bridge. Halfway there, the corridor lights flickered to life one section at a time, as if the ship was just realizing I was awake. Every flicker echoed with a faint crackle, static through the speakers that lined the ceiling. When I reached the bridge, the main viewport was shuttered, but the monitors were still active. Navigation data scrolled across one of them, but the coordinates didn't make sense. We weren't anywhere near Neptune's orbit anymore. The computer identified our position as Sector 17E, unknown object proximity warning active. I tried to access the mission logs, but was denied. Crew manifest, denied. Everything required a captain's code, but the captain's pod, I knew, was still sealed back in Cryo Bay. I opened the intership comm channel manually and heard it then. A faint breathing sound, not mechanical, not mine. A slow inhale, exhale, distorted through static. I froze, listening. It didn't come from one location. It moved between channels, as if someone, or something, was drifting through the ship's communication network. "Who's there?" I said quietly. No reply, just that breathing, a little closer now. I cut the comms and locked the bridge door. The oxygen recycler was offline, so I had maybe 6 hours of clean air, enough to get the captain up and find out what happened. When I went back toward Cryo Bay, the frost on the bulkheads was thicker, like rime spreading outward from the pods. Pods 1, 2, 3, all still sealed. Then I saw it, Pod 17. The glass was shattered from the inside. The chamber beyond was empty except for streaks of the same black residue we'd sometimes see on old derelicts, micrometeoroid dust fused with oxidized coolant. It wasn't dry. It looked wet, like something had smeared it with bare hands. I stepped closer, trying not to look at the thing floating just inside the chamber. A thin strip of cloth, maybe from a suit lining, drifting as if there were still currents in the air. Then, the emergency lighting changed color, white to deep red, and a low siren started pulsing. The ship's voice, monotone and calm, spoke through the static. Biosignature detected in Cryosector 17. Quarantine in effect. That's when I realized I wasn't the one it was detecting. Something else was awake. I backed out of the bay, but before the door could close, the motion sensor inside triggered. For a split second, the overhead lights flickered, and I saw a figure step from between the pods. Tall, human-shaped. But it moved wrong. Its steps lagged, like time stuttered around it. The door sealed before I could see its face. I ran for the engineering deck, every light behind me switching off as I passed, plunging the corridors back into darkness. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely key in the override. The computer demanded an authorization code again. I slammed my fist against the console. "This is Kara Mendoza, ID 9-2-4-Delta, requesting emergency control." Nothing, only static. Then, from the speakers overhead, that same slow, distorted breathing answered back, followed by a voice, whisper quiet. 17. Awake. The sound of that whisper froze me where I stood. It wasn't just coming from the ceiling speakers anymore. It was inside the room, vibrating through the metal deck under my feet. I forced myself to focus. Emergency control involved manually rerouting power from the cryocore. If I could cut that section off, maybe I could trap whatever had come out of Pod 17. I opened the access panel beside the console and crawled into the maintenance conduit. The tunnel was narrow, cables hanging loose, frost forming on every surface. My breath fogged the inside of my visor. The further I crawled, the colder it got. Halfway down, I passed a viewport slit that looked into the cryo bay from above. I shouldn't have looked. Below me, the red lights pulsed like a heartbeat, washing over the rows of pods. One of them, Pod 17, was glowing faintly from within, a dull blue that didn't belong to any system on our ship. Something was standing beside it. It looked human at first, but its proportions were wrong. Too tall, arms a little too long, skin pale as the frost around it. It was facing away, head bowed toward the open pod. I whispered, "Oh God," without realizing I'd said it aloud. The figure twitched. Then it looked up, not toward the bay, but directly into the viewport, straight at me. My headset screamed with static. I scrambled forward through the conduit, scraping my knees, not caring. Every few seconds, the lights behind me flickered and the sound followed. A dragging noise, metal on metal, echoing closer. When I dropped out into the engineering bay, I slammed the hatch behind me and sealed it. The console flickered to life on its own, systems cycling through languages I didn't recognize. My reflection stared back at me from the dark screen, except it wasn't moving the same way I was. My reflection blinked half a second too late. I stepped back, heart pounding. The ship's computer crackled again, calm and detached. Containment breach. Sector 17 expanding. Expanding? That didn't make sense, unless whatever had escaped was changing the ship itself. Through the bulkhead, I could hear faint knocking, slow, rhythmic. 3 taps, pause, 3 more, like someone testing the metal from the other side. I grabbed a plasma cutter from the rack and activated it. The blue flame hummed, casting jittering light across the room. "If you're human," I shouted, "stay back." No answer, just the creak of bending steel. The lights went out. Total darkness. Only the cutter's glow lit the room in blue flashes. The air turned thin, my suit alarms screaming about pressure loss. Then, out of the black, hands pressed against the inside of the viewport glass. Pale, long-fingered hands. Dozens of them, overlapping, sliding slowly downward as if they were melting through. I stumbled back. My cutter's fuel sputtered and died. Silence. Then a voice, mine, but wrong, spoke softly from behind me. "We dreamed together, Kara. 17 never sleeps alone." I turned. Standing there was I. Same face, same suit. But her visor was cracked, and behind it, her eyes were completely black. She tilted her head, the same way the figure in the bay had. "You woke too early," she whispered. "We're still out there." I ran. I don't remember opening the escape pod hatch. I don't remember hitting launch. Just the deafening roar as the pod detached and fired into open space. Through the small viewport, I saw the Aquila 4 shrink into the distance. Parts of the hull were glowing with that same blue light, spreading like veins under the skin. Then, nothing. The ship blinked out, gone, as if erased. I was alone again. My life support readout stabilized, oxygen normal. But the nav computer showed no stars outside, just blackness. The same coordinates kept flashing, Sector 17E. That was 3 months ago, according to the pod's internal clock. I don't sleep much. When I do, I see the cryo bay, rows of pods, frost on the glass, and I hear that breathing, slow and steady, right beside my ear. Sometimes the comms crackle to life for a few seconds, and I hear my own voice whisper back at me, 17's still awake. My name's Jonas Hale, communications officer aboard the Vigilant One, an observation outpost parked just outside the orbit of Pluto. Our mission was simple: monitor deep space transmissions, record cosmic background noise, and map gravitational anomalies. A quiet job. Sometimes, weeks would go by without a single human voice over the comms, until last month. It was the end of a double shift. I was half asleep at my console when the receiver locked onto a pulse. Faint, rhythmic, but undeniably artificial. 3 bursts, pause, 2 bursts, pause, 3 again. Almost like Morse, but not any code I knew. At first, I thought it was feedback, but the spectral signature wasn't from any known source. The wavelength was buried deep in the background radiation itself. I logged it and tagged it for analysis, but something about it felt wrong. The pulses weren't perfectly timed. They wavered slightly, like breathing. I replayed the sequence through the external speakers. Click, click, click. The sound vibrated in my chest more than in my ears. Then, the lights dimmed. For half a second, every system on the outpost dropped to 0 and came back online. The station AI announced a power recalibration, but I'd never seen that happen before. When I checked the data feed, the coordinates of the signal had changed by a fraction of a degree, closer to us. Signals don't move like that. I should have reported it to command right then, but curiosity got the better of me. I increased the gain and allowed the system to track the source automatically. The pulse grew stronger over the next hour. It was like whatever was sending it could feel me listening. Eventually, I patched the signal through the visual array to get a spectral map. The monitor filled with static, then cleared into a faint pattern, a circle of dark points forming a rough spiral. At the center, a single bright spike of light. I froze, because when I overlaid our position data, that spike lined up exactly with the vigilant one. I shut it off. After that night, strange things started happening around the station. Minor systems are flickering, and comm panels are lighting up on their own. One of the techs, Alvarez, swore he heard someone whispering through the coolant pipes while he was on maintenance duty. He thought it was me, until he realized the voice was repeating something he'd said hours earlier. We laughed it off. Space does weird things to your head, but the signal kept returning. Every time I muted it, it found another channel. First through my headset, then through the station's ventilation. Once, I even heard it vibrating in the water recycler. Always the same rhythm. 3, 2, 3. One night, I decided to trace it manually. I suited up, left the main module, and followed the line of transmission using a handheld receiver. Out there, floating above Pluto's dim horizon, the stars looked frozen, uncaring. The signal was strongest near the auxiliary antenna array, a structure we hadn't used in months. When I reached it, I saw something that made no sense. The dish was bent outward, as if struck from the inside, and etched across its surface, in frost or maybe burn marks, were those same repeating patterns: 3 dots, 2 dots, 3, carved deep into the metal like fingerprints pressed into clay. I touched one without thinking. My visor display glitched. The stars blinked out, replaced by black static. Then, for a single second, a face appeared, pale, featureless except for a mouth stretched too wide, whispering words I couldn't hear. The static cleared and the stars returned. My pulse was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. When I made it back inside, the internal clocks were wrong, off by exactly 13 hours and 17 minutes. No one believed me when I told them. The others thought I'd fallen asleep in the suit and hallucinated. But the next day, Alvarez didn't report for duty. His quarters were empty. His ID tag and gear were still there, but his comlink kept transmitting a faint background hum. 3 short bursts, 2 long, 3 short. That's when I realized it wasn't just a signal. It was a message, and it was already inside the station. After Alvarez vanished, Command finally responded to my reports. They ordered a full lockdown and told us to maintain radio silence until relay contact is reestablished. That was the last transmission we ever got. For the next 2 days, every channel stayed dead. No updates, no telemetry from Earth, Just the hum of life support fans and that faint click, 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 pause, click, click, pause, click, click, click in the background of every system. By the third day, the crew started fracturing. Miller from hydroponics swore he saw Alvarez walking past the observation window without a suit. When we checked the camera feed, there was nothing there. But Miller wouldn't stop staring at that window afterward, whispering, "He's trying to get back in." That night, I was alone in the comms bay, reviewing the data again. Every time I looked at the waveforms, they rearranged themselves, forming shapes that looked like faces, not random noise, expressions, smiling. And every now and then, I'd hear my own voice in the playback. "Let me in." It wasn't a recording. It was live. The power cut out at 2:17 hours. Total blackout. The emergency lights kicked on, dim red glows painting the corridors like arteries. Somewhere deep in the ship, metal groaned and buckled. I grabbed a flashlight and started toward the reactor room, thinking maybe a fuse had blown. Halfway there, the hallway ahead shimmered, like heat distortion. And from that ripple in the air, a figure began to form. Alvarez. His face was pale, features stretched, eyes perfectly black. His body flickered between solid and static, as if the signal itself was shaping him. He opened his mouth, and the same 3-2-3 rhythm came out. Not words, just clicks echoing against the metal walls. I stumbled backward, yelling his name. He reached out a hand, and for a moment, I swear I felt it. Cold and electric, like being touched by living static. Every speaker on the ship screamed to life, overlapping voices chanting the rhythm faster and faster. 3-2-3, 3-2-3, 3-2-3. The walls vibrated. The lights pulsed with each beat. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was in the observation dome. I don't remember walking there. Outside the glass, space looked wrong, warped, twisting in slow spirals like something massive was moving beneath the stars. The signal was loudest here, resonating through the glass itself. I realized what it was trying to do. It wasn't calling us. It was calling through us, using us like amplifiers. Every time we listened, it came a little closer. I tried shutting down the receivers, but they rebooted themselves. The dish outside rotated on its own, aligning not with deep space, but directly toward the dome, toward me. The hum grew unbearable. I could feel it vibrating inside my skull, shaking my teeth. Then a voice, clear, familiar, cut through the static. "Jonas," it was my voice, calm, flat. "We've already arrived." The glass began to crack. Thin lines spread like veins across the dome, glowing faintly with blue light. I backed away, tripping over a console. When I looked up, the stars were gone. All I could see was a vast, swirling eye, black at the center, ringed by faint starlight, staring directly at the station. The last thing I remember is the sound of the hull tearing apart, and that rhythm, click, 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 beating like a heart. I came to in my escape pod. No memory of launching. The distress beacon was active, but instead of coordinates, the screen displayed a single repeating line of code, 323-323-323. There are no stars out here, no Earth signal, no anything. Only that sound, faint and steady, playing through the speakers even when I cut the power. Sometimes, when I look through the viewport, I think I see shapes moving in the black, tall and thin, almost human. And every so often, the comm light flashes green. When I answer, A voice that sounds exactly like mine whispers, "Transmission received. Preparing to relay."